Well, hello there. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It is morning for me, and I am at Qualicum Beach on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, just in case you didn't know where that was. Now, I used to come down here an awful lot in my beginning days of van life. I have a couple stories to share with you here, but I've been debating on whether or not I should share them with you because they're a little bit, I guess you can say, woo-woo kind of stories. And yesterday, I had my first sign indicating that I should think about doing so. And that was a Jones's soda cap that I found on the ground. And underneath, they all have a little saying. And this one states, "Smooth seas never make experienced sailors." And then the second message, I guess you can say, was this morning when I got up. Normally I put on some YouTube videos to watch while I get ready, but for some reason I decided to listen to some music. And on the playlist happened to be the first song, Into the Mystic by Van Morrison. And I was like, okay, maybe we should go ahead and share this story, or maybe two. So I used to live in Qualicum Beach, I want to say about 10 years ago. For sure 10 years ago I was living here. And I will say that my timeline is a little bit distorted over this past decade. An awful lot has happened. I'm not going to get into complete detail about all that, at least not at this time. But I say Qualicum Beach is where I lost my mind and found my soul. So, let's start the story. It all starts under the cedar tree. Now, if only this tree could talk, it could confirm these stories. On this one particular evening, I parked under the cedar tree. I was leaning up against the back of my van, taking in the view that unfolded in front of me. So this truck goes down the ramp and drives down towards the beach. The tide was out a little bit farther than what it is now, of course. And he unloads his kayak. Well, then he comes and drives up and he decides to park right here in the space. Of course, he's driving this huge white Dodge Ram truck. And literally I said in my head, didn't even mouth the words, going, "Wow, buddy, you just took away my view." Well, all of a sudden, the truck starts up, he backs out, goes and parks somewhere else, walks down to his kayak, he yells up to me, "I didn't want to take away your view." I was like, how did this guy know what I was thinking? Anyways, kind of gave me the creeps a little bit. But I continued to enjoy the view of what I could and watched him play around in the water in his little kayak. I thought I would come in where it's a little bit quieter and a little bit warmer. So, once he got back in from his kayak, it was pretty dark out. And I had just finished dinner and dishes and putting all that away. Anyways, he ended up coming up and having a little conversation with me about kayaking, because, of course, that's a common interest between us. And we had exchanged phone numbers to go and do a paddle together because I wanted somebody to paddle with because, well, I hate paddling by myself all the time. And I really like to ocean kayak too. And it's hard to do by yourself because, well, the ocean's way more unpredictable than a lake is, even though lakes can be questionable too. But anyways, so that's what we ended up doing. And then we talked for about another half an hour or so. And he shared so much information about himself. He shared how he had a quadruple bypass heart surgery, shared about his children, how he has been helping out a senior gentleman, all this type of stuff. You know, sounded like an okay guy. Anyways, so we ended up saying our goodbyes. But what was really interesting is I never got to see his face. When he was talking to me, his back was to the light. So it was dark and I could not see his actual face and what he looked like. But of course, he got to see mine. And well, he did say I was a beautiful lady. So a couple days later, I had arrived back down to Qualicum here. Now, this is where things get interesting. A couple days later, I headed back to Qualicum Beach, and I parked where I always parked, under that cedar tree. I was going to give him a call to see if he wanted to get together the next day. And by the way, his name is Quentin. But I had noticed that his truck was beside me, and I looked out to the water. The water was calmer than what you see now. It was so still it was like glass. There was a smoky haze that started a couple 100 feet out as I watched the back of Quentin and his kayak paddle into the Mystic. Well, I just thought I'll just chit-chat with him when he comes back in. So I took off quickly to the store to go get some stuff for dinner. But when I come back, my parking spot was taken. So I actually had to park on the other side of his truck. I decided to go for a little stroll along the beach, waiting for him to paddle back in. I took a seat upon this log to watch the sun slowly set. And I noticed this red light flashing out over there by the island. I don't recall ever seeing a flashing light out there before. Now, maybe it's always been there, I've just never paid attention. I don't know. But I tell you, I didn't like this feeling that I was getting inside of me. Something I personally never really felt before. And, well, I was a little worried because Quentin wasn't back yet. Now, something I didn't tell you is when I first met Quentin in our first conversation, he reminded me of my father. And I had lost my father several years back. So, just a little keynote there, I guess, in the story. Anyways, I was like, okay, what do I do? Because I'm like literally talking out loud, going, are you okay? Do you need help? La-di-da-di-dee, la-di-da-di-da. And I'm like, I don't even know this guy. I know nothing about him. Like, what do you do? Do I call search and rescue? Going, yeah, I saw this guy go kayaking and he hasn't come back in yet. Like, what's the grounds for making that call? And I'm like, well, the number that he gave me was a house number. Maybe his roommate, which is a senior gentleman that he looks after, could help me out a little bit on that. So I had called him up and he said, oh no, Quentin went away for the night. He's going to be camping over at one of the islands over there. Okay, fair enough. So I was like, I guess I really don't need to worry now, do I? But that feeling was not going away. Something was wrong. I just don't know what. So anyways, I went back up to my van and finished cleaning up. And, well, I was going to take off for the night. But a part of me decided not to. So I just sat outside my van a little longer and was listening to some music. And the song came on, Sign of the Times from Harry Styles. Well, all of a sudden I felt like dancing, and I did this complete contemporary dance, which, trust me, I don't do that type of dancing at all. But I did that night, and right there in the parking lot under the street lamp. I was like, that was odd. And there was a couple lyrics in that song that kind of caught my attention. And one was dodging bullets, and the other was, you look pretty good down there, but you're not. Yet the whole time I was dancing, I felt like somebody was watching me. And I thought, well, maybe Quentin's just hanging around in the water, because I couldn't see, like, I don't know, 5 feet into the water. It was just pitch black that night. It was a new moon. There was no moonlight, so, and the street lamps don't really shine out that far. It was totally pitch black. So I was like, maybe he's just having a good giggle out there while I'm dancing like a fool up here. So I climbed into my van to get some sleep. But sleep is not what I got. Not at all. I ended up with a full-blown kidney stone attack. I was in so much pain. I was so sick. I was very sweaty. If you've had a kidney stone attack, you can totally relate. If not, you don't want to relate. Trust me. So needless to say, I really didn't sleep at all that night. But the next morning was Saturday and there was farmer's market. The pain had subsided. I thought, you know what, maybe I'll go to the farmer's market and then I'll head to Nanaimo. Just in case this happens again, I'll be closer to a hospital. So at that time, I had a tray that I used to put up above on my shelf. And then when I was driving, I would take it down and put it on my bed. So I grabbed the tray to put in my bed. And I had noticed two objects. So I had just cleaned out my whole entire van, doing a spring clean and reorganized everything and put things back. And these two objects, I know where I put them on my shelf. I kind of have a little bit of an altar with crystals and stuff like that. And there was two things on there. One was a crocheted angel that guess you can say a family member through marriage had given me for my travels when I started Vanlife. And the other was a bullet shell casing. Yeah, a bullet shell casing. Maybe I should do a little bit more explaining here. When I was 15, so yes, quite young, I was 4 months pregnant. Yeah, I know. My father had chose to take his life for reasons, of course, many of them, to be honest with you. And his choice was to blow out his heart. So that's as far as I'm going on that one. But it was like 3 days later, so the day of my dad's funeral, my uncle had put a loaded gun to my head and threatened to take my life away from me. So when I was doing my road trip back in 2020, I was in a particular area and I had noticed this casing. It was like right out my driver's door on the ground. And I remember picking it up and just looking at it going like, wow, that's when the realization had truly hit me that I almost wasn't here. All he had to do was pull the trigger, right? So, like I said, it was just a kind of like a, whoa, I can't believe all this happened. I didn't get the chance to grieve my father. It actually took many years because I was pregnant. My focus was on the baby, not about anything else. So it was probably about 23 years after when all of a sudden I started to actually grieve my father and my loss of him. So, yeah, grief can happen at any time. But anyways, let's back up to the story. So I grabbed the tray and I noticed that these items are on this tray. And I'm like, how did they get there? Because I didn't put them there. And I know I didn't. And they're 2 feet from where my altar is. So I'm still curious, how did they get there? But anyways, I was just like, whatever. I just want to go and do what I need to do and get to Nanaimo. So I get out and I go into my front seat and I shut the door and I have this card up in the visor, just right up above here. And it was given to me by a family that I gave massages to. When I was leaving on my road trip, I didn't think I was ever coming back. So it was quite the goodbyes, right? And this card was really beautiful and everything. And anyways, it was just covered in hearts and everything. So I grabbed the card because I'm like, that was odd. Why did it just fly down? It's been up there for like over 2 months and it's never moved. Now all of a sudden, now it's going to move? But I grabbed the card and I open it up and there's all these hearts all over the page. And all I see is my heart. That's all I see for writing. I just put it down. I'm like, I don't want to play this game with you guys. Whoever's messing with my head right now, you can just leave me be. So, I took off and went to the market. I ended up with that kidney stone attack again. I can't drive. It's like 40 minutes away. I can't do it. So I just decided to go back down to the beach and park where I always park. And I backed in and I got out. I opened up the back so I could have some fresh air. And I just curled up in the back and, would pop my head up every so often to see if Quentin had paddled back in yet. So it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and there's still no Quentin. All of a sudden I hear a helicopter and I get this shiver down my spine. About 20 minutes later, I poke out and look out of the water and I see a yellow search and rescue cruising along the shoreline. I was like, that's not right. Something's going on. I get out of my van. I'm feeling a lot better from the kidney stone attack. And I'm stretching my legs. Anyways, I go and stand at the back of the van, and a police officer approaches me. And he asks, "Do you know anything about this truck parked next to you?" It's like, "Yeah, I do, actually." It says, "He's not coming back in, is he?" It's like, "Can I ask you some questions?" "Yes, you may." So, of course, he asks what I know. So I shared with him. I pulled in, parked. He was already here. I looked out the water. I saw the back of him and his kayak paddle into the Mystic, which was the smoke. It's like, "Okay, I'll be back in just a moment." So he takes off and he comes back. I said, "Well, I answered your questions. Are you going to answer mine?" He says, "Well, technically I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to." "You're right. He's not coming back in." Well, that just broke my heart, of course. So what had happened was Quentin had suffered a major heart attack. And I'm very happy that it happened doing what he loved the most. May you rest in peace, Quentin. I feel sorry for the police officer that had to deal with me after giving me that news, because all of a sudden I had this big rush of all that had just happened. Me seeing the flashing light, not having a good feeling about it, like something was wrong. And then, of course, me dancing to that song of dodging bullets, and you look pretty good down there, but you're not. Right? So that was kind of like, And of course, the angel and the bullet shell casing the next morning. Like, wow, it was just so crazy all that was happening. And I'm sharing this with this police officer. He's probably going, "Oh my God, she's a little wackadoo." But he didn't treat me that way at all. He was so good with me that he even said, "You go ahead and you spend the night right here on the beach, and I'll make sure nobody bothers you," because technically there is no overnight parking allowed here. So that was very kind of him. But anyways, let's get on to the next story. So this next story happens in the exact same spot, under the cedar tree. Except for it's a different vehicle this time. It's a white Jeep, and it pulls up and parks right beside me. Anyways, I'm sitting outside, and this gentleman gets out of the Jeep, and he goes over to the cedar tree, and he wraps his arms around it, and he's looking at me with this huge smile on his face. Of course, I'm just looking at him like, "Oh my gosh, you look just like my father." Now, as I already told you, my father passed away many, many years ago, so it's not my father. And the weirdest thing is this guy was dressed in complete white, head to toe. And he was wearing this tracksuit. And it was the tracksuit that my dad used to have in the 80s, and it was blue. This guy's was white. Like, really, it was weird. It was like he was an angel. It was so bizarre. Anyways, we started chit-chatting, and, the more I talked, the more I found out that he was very much like my father. His love for wood, like cedar trees and stuff like that, and my dad was right into woodwork and all that stuff, and he was a millwright and so on. It's like just all these little weird connections, and, he liked to do a little bit of traveling and camping out in his Jeep, and he had a couple daughters, and, it was just really nice sharing some time with this guy. He was just a really, really good soul. But still, like I said, a little bit creepy. So we had 2 more interactions after that first one. And the last one, we were sitting on the bench and we're chit-chatting away. And I had just finished getting my tattoo done. And he kind of saw the process from beginning to end. It took about, 5 sessions. I was doing a cover-up on it and making it much bigger and so on. Anywho, one day I might share the complete story about my tattoo. But he heard the story on what all the meaning was and everything, and he just really loved it. And he had asked if he could take a picture of it. And I was like, "Sure." And he's like, "Can I have a picture of your face in there too?" Like, if that's what you want, by all means. Right? real little memory, I guess, for him to look back and remember our encounters, as short and sweet as they were. But I just thought that was so trippy that this guy was, like I said, and each time I saw him, he was wearing the white jumpsuit. So I kind of questioned, like, was he an angel or was he not? It's so bizarre. Well, there's a couple strange stories of my life for you. I know, pretty deep. But now you know a little bit more about me. And, well, it is my life. Unfortunately, not all of it is good. But I'm still quite a happy person, as you can tell, and live my life to its fullest. Because of those situations, that's what it's taught me. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up. Until next time, bye-bye.